let's take a look at the mini lesson that you're going to be teaching to your peers. I do realize that it is much more challenging to teach something to your peers than it is to children. However, this is an experience that will really help you be better prepared for your own teaching experiences. So let's take a look, first of all, at what the overall project is. It's about a 20-minute lesson. Within a minute or two of that, that includes several specific pieces that we're going to break down and look at individually. So here is what you're going to be assessed on for your 80-point mini lesson. Let's go back now and look at the individual elements. As you begin planning, really focus on the strand that you signed up for, such as geography or civics, and make sure that you have a lesson topic that's going to allow students to do inquiry. You're not teaching them songs about memorization. Instead, think back to the activity that you did with the 3 cities, in which you provided the resources and the students investigated those resources and then drew their own conclusions. So in that case, there was not a right answer or a wrong answer. Your inquiry activity could be that way, or there could be a correct answer that you expect them to arrive at, given the information, the sources that you're providing for them. It does need to be doing some kind of inquiry. So think about, what question do you want students to work to find? Then you're going to put this in your own words in a focus, just what it is that you want your students to know and be able to do. You should use grade levels between 1st and 8th. If you're a SPED major and you are really interested in doing a higher grade, let me know, please. But otherwise, you could assume that you are doing this lesson in a resource room, maybe for 4 or 5 3rd graders. You can structure that however you'd like. Now, trade books. Trade books. All a trade book means is that it's a book that's not really intended to be used as a textbook. It can be fiction, it can be nonfiction, it can be just about any genre. So some examples: a book called This Class Can Save the Planet. It's a book actually written by a 6th grade class and their science teacher or social studies teacher. Another one, America's Real First Thanksgiving. Now, obviously, these books are too long to do a full read aloud of the full book, and that's okay. You would determine what excerpts are important to your lesson. What information from this trade book is important that you would want to share? Here's a book for younger children called We Are Water Protectors, and this is the very first Caldecott Medal awarded to a Native and Indigenous illustrator. And just an FYI, this refers back to 2016 to the No Dapple Pipeline. And so it's a book written by Carol Lindstrom, who was there. And then another book called Unspeakable, The Tulsa Race Massacre, which is a book written for children. It is a beautifully written book by Carol Boston Weatherford and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. So these books aren't intended to be textbooks. Instead, they're ways of gaining students' attention and teaching them about history through stories. For example, those are just some examples. So when you see trade books, you know what that means. You're going to do an actual read aloud of your trade book for about 5 minutes. This is your read aloud. This doesn't mean that you're going to show a video of a read aloud. You need to have an actual book that you are using and have your excerpts determined in advance so that you know where they're going to go within your lesson, what it is you're going to teach. You don't have to necessarily read for 5 straight minutes. You're going to do some questioning. Maybe you want to introduce it and share just a minute or two of it and then come back later to a different section where possibly the book answers questions that you've been talking about. But remember that you must read the book yourself to get these points. You're going to provide one academic standard. For a mini lesson, I would not worry about doing more than one. Certainly many times when we teach in our own classes, we double up on standards. That happens a lot. But for our purposes, just focus on one that is specific to social studies. Your learning objective. This is specifically what you want the students to know and be able to do. If you haven't completed your pre-1 yet, you may not be very familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. So a couple of examples of what I'm talking about when I say level 3, apply or above. Here we see the 6 levels, starting with remember and understand. So we want our verbs, we want our actions that our peers are going to do to start with apply or go even higher. Generally, you're going to choose something from apply or analyze for this activity. Here are some examples. Maybe you're having them compare and contrast some concepts. Also, another example that I've got here to look at that has a few more verbs is, and you can Google these and find all kinds of different ways with different examples. Notice that all of these are ing verbs. So when we look at applying, we see things like experimenting, interviewing, preparing, presenting, articulating. And then when we see analyzing, we get into deconstructing. How do they break it down and put it into small pieces, for example? How do they deduce? What information do they use to deduce a response and using critical thinking? How did they estimate, for example? And then you could certainly look at evaluating and creating, but more than likely for this mini lesson, you're going to use one of these 2 steps within Bloom's taxonomy. Now, let's see, what is very important to think about as you're doing this is to make sure that your verb is something you can assess. Chapter 3 in your textbook, which you've already read, is going to be very helpful with that. And we'll come back to that a little bit. Now, here's the bulk. Here's the bulk of your teaching, your mini lesson. You're presenting it to your group as if they are your class, and you're going to engage them. You're going to pique their attention and notice the spelling, Pique. You're going to pique your group's attention with a hook. A hook can be something as simple as, have you ever heard? What would happen if? Did you know that? And give them a way to kind of draw them into what your concept is. Never, ever start with, turn to page 83, we're going to read about. That's not very engaging. That doesn't really make anyone go, oh yeah, man, page 83, I can't wait for page 83. Give them something with the context to draw on. And then I give you some examples down here. You're going to present a brief lesson, and it can be just 2 or 3 minutes, but you are teaching a concept. And then you're going to let your group know what they're going to do next, a guided activity. And this should be some kind of a game or activity that would allow them to collaborate, or maybe you want them to complete it individually, but you would give them directions as though you would give them directions to an elementary class. So you would give them a few minutes to work on that. Then you're going to assess. When we assess something, it means more than just walking around and observing to make sure that all students are on task and that everybody's understanding. Of course, you're going to do that. That's what teachers do. That's part of doing what we do. But when you think about needing some kind of a record, for example, of what the students have done to demonstrate mastery, that's where you go back to this verb from your learning objective and see how you're going to assess this. What is it they're doing? Are they doing a comparison? Then what is that going to look like? And how are you going to evaluate that comparison that you've just had them do. An extension activity you're going to describe. Don't ever think of an extension activity as busy work. It's not busy work. You may very well be teaching a lesson over economics that a student or students are really interested in. Maybe you're comparing US economic, such as the dollar, to something in another country. And wow, they get really excited and want to take off. What could you provide for them to continue on with that learning? Not, okay, I'm going to give you this crossword puzzle here, enjoy this busy work, and stay quiet while you work on it. No, it should be something that's going to require them to put in some effort and do some critical thinking. Your written assignment over all this that will have all of these headings, all of these bolded headings, this is due within 48 hours of your presentation. However, I strongly suggest that you have all of this written up in advance and that you have access during your teaching. And then immediately following your lesson presentation, that you do the evaluation, the reflection. This is something that teachers do. We evaluate and we reflect all the time, all the time. So it's important to do that very soon after you have taught your mini lesson. I've given you some questions that you need to consider within that. And that includes how you would address some of your diverse students, like students from different cultural, ethnic, language backgrounds, students who are English language learners, students who are on 504 plans, such as those who may have visual impairment or auditory issues, for example. What about some of those students who are not particularly motivated? How are you going to get them to engage in this particular lesson? Your evaluation should be at least one full page, double spaced. Remember that in academic writing big blocks of text is not appropriate. Use appropriate academic writing skills, and you'll be in good shape with that. Now, when I say one full page double spaced, not including the heading, if your heading is from here down to here, down to this line where your name is, and then you start here and write this much, that is not a full page, double spaced or not. That is not a full page. Your reflection should be rather detailed. So you should be targeting a bare minimum of one full page, not including the heading. So what you may want to do is use these headings, and what you will do is, because I won't be able to watch every person's full lesson, I'll be able to see bits and pieces. What you'll do is you will self-assess the items with the asterisks, and you will submit this score sheet along with the written lesson and including the reflection, and you will assess these 4 items within your score sheet. We will keep time, so within about 2 minutes of 20 minutes. If your whole lesson presentation, everything goes 14 minutes, then you're way under time. Then you should have prepared more effectively. Also, we won't have time for you to go over that by very much. And I believe that's about all. That's about all for this assignment. You can always look online, and if you're looking for a particular concept within a grade level, for example, maybe you're doing second grade culture and society, I suggest that you go to the Oklahoma Academic Standards, and from there, go into the social studies frameworks and see what kind of resources you can find in there. You don't necessarily have to invent the whole lesson yourself. You can take something that's been developed and make it your own. Now, if you do get examples, if you do get ideas from something, then give credit where credit is due, but also make appropriate changes for what you will be doing within your group of university students, even though you're presenting it as though they will be elementary students. I hope you enjoy putting this together and get a great deal out of it. Be sure and check the discussion board to see what date your lesson will be taught.